Welcome to the Jungle Brothers podcast. I'm your host, Joey, and today, Paulie and I are joined by Renee Lynch. Renee is a naturopath who specializes in women's fertility. Now, I first met Renee about 10 or 12 years ago, training at CrossFit Bondi, which was a gym run by my mate, Glenn. Shout out to Big G. In the time that's passed since then, Renee has carved out a career for herself as a naturopath, so taking natural ways to help women with their reproductive health and fertility. I was really interested to get Renee in today to have a chat about that, but sort of more broadly about women's health, and particularly through the lens of women who are busy and active and in the gym training, doing that thing like we're doing here at Jungle Botany. So it was quite a broad-ranging chat, some really cool stuff for Paulie and I to learn about menstrual cycles and how that can affect women's performance and how they can better manage it. Amazing chat. Renee's a total legend. I'm going to leave some links in the show notes so that you can check out her stuff. I would definitely recommend you jump onto her Instagram account. She has a lot of free resources and puts out a lot of really good information. Anyway, super enlightening chat today. It was an honor to have Renee on. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into the show. Welcome to the show, fam. Renee, thank you for being here. Absolutely. I guess there's a bit we want to dive into, and the topic is kind of around women and around women's health, kind of specifically from the training side of things. But I thought it'd be really cool to hear from you, your sort of path with it, naturopathy, how you got into that, and how you've ended up in your area of specialization.
Well, I guess health has always been something of interest to me. It's one of those weird things. It was almost like a hobby to read magazines on superfoods when I was a teenager. Very strange. And then for whatever reason, life took me in different directions, and I worked in PR and I worked at a prominent company that encouraged women to quit sugar.
Oh.
Yes. So I suppose it went from...
I feel like I know a few people that worked for said company.
Yes, you do, because I bumped into you one day outside Single Origin.
Okay, yep. Yeah, the office
so
was just there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was upstairs there. I suppose I looked at studying when I was 21, and then I came full circle and I enrolled at 30 in my degree. And it was good because I guess I knew I really wanted to do it. And I had the support from my partner. He's like, yep, just do it. You know, you're either going to be this age and have the degree that you want, or you're just going to be that age. So went back to study and absolutely loved it. So it's a Bachelor of Health Science, naturopathy. So not just some online course that you can do, which they are out there. It's crazy.
And would the qualification be legit? Like recognised?
Not a short online course?
Yeah.
No.
Right.
And that's where the issue comes in, because you see often, naturopath responsible for the death of, and it's usually someone who's done a short course and calling themselves a naturopath. And the issue is that we aren't yet registered, like say a dietitian. And that's where the issue comes in, is that for so long there was so many different courses and qualifications that could give you the title of a naturopath. But now the minimum education is a Bachelor of Health Science. So it's about 4 years.
Okay, and that's some silly question, but like a Bachelor of Health Science, that could be studied at a TAFE, or is that a university thing?
My one was at a private college,
right,
but can be done at a university as well. There's a couple of universities that are doing it. And the good thing about the baseline qualification now is that there's only a few institutions within Australia where you can study it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So it's somewhat beyond personal trainer qualifications, you could say.
Somewhat, yeah. Because that can be varied as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so that's cool. Yeah, that was actually something I wanted to ask, because I'm sure that naturopathy gets lumped into the, I don't know, there's so many kind of unrecognized, or like there are a few quack disciplines out there. One that comes to mind is homeopathy. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe that's come a long way as well. I haven't seen a homeopath before, but I'm sure that that what you do gets criticized at times for being in that realm.
It does, and that's because back in the day, within the naturopathic degree, there was remedial massage in there, there's flower essences, there's herbal medicine, there's nutrition. They did do, a lot of naturopaths from say 15, 20 years ago did do homeopathy as part of the degree, and also astrology.
Oh.
And Glenn will laugh if I say there's a lot to astrology because he thinks it's bullshit. But, you know, like some of these things are really cool, but the degree to kind of become what it is today has kind of had to go down that scientific path to be taken seriously. So while we shouldn't turn our back on, you know, empirical knowledge and tradition, we do have to kind of come into the modern age and really consider the science as well.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you got the qualification, and then where did that take you? You start a clinic? Like, how did you turn it into your profession?
Yeah, so a lot of the feedback I got from people who had previously studied was, oh, there's not really any support once you finish. You kind of have to go out and make something of yourself. And I said, that's the same with any degree. You know, like you don't have a guaranteed job at the end. So, yeah, it is really what you make it. And there's a lot of social media marketing. I had a little bit of a following from that sugary job that I mentioned.
Are you trying to not get sued? Is that why you're not mentioning names?
I don't know. I suppose I've just come a long way and don't really believe in cutting out bananas and dates. But
yes, okay.
So, yeah, it was just promotion on social media to start with, and I started practicing out of a clinic in Bronte that had a pretty solid reputation, and just kind of built it from there. Women's health was always like the area that I wanted to go in. You know, I really wanted to work with couples through preconception, women through pregnancy and postpartum. Essentially, I wanted to get a woman while she had this, you know, pure being inside of her and help her maybe change some things about her life that was going to positively impact the next generation. So getting, you know, the couple from the very beginning is essentially the starting point. And so that's my focus. Fertility is my focus now.
Would you say that it's a big industry in that there's a lot of people out there who require assistance with improving fertility?
I would say that it has become a very big issue.
Right.
For sure. You know, you hear more and more these days, you know, couples needing IVF. And while it's incredible that we have assisted reproductive technology now, and it's allowed so many couples realize their dreams of becoming a family, what IVF cannot do is it cannot improve sperm quality and it cannot improve egg quality. And that is where I come in.
Yeah, okay, that's a cool way to put it. I guess it's probably important for us to kind of mention that there's obviously like any kind of discussion around reproduction or fertility, or even people taking medicine, things like that. It's very easy for people to get defensive because of certain positions, which is totally like within their rights. I guess we're going to talk about it very objectively, and so it's not to discredit maybe what someone's viewpoint might be.
Absolutely. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. Like what you're saying is there's things that you can do to improve your health, which is going to help to improve the likelihood and the success, like the overall health of what you're reproducing.
Exactly. And so if I have a couple come to me and their goal is to fall pregnant, but they have been looking at IVF, if we're doing some preconception work and supporting both, you know, male fertility and female fertility, and they still can't fall pregnant naturally, their chances of having a healthy pregnancy are likely going to be increased just by doing that groundwork. And I'm not just talking about supplementation. So much of it is diet and lifestyle changes. And that's kind of the stuff that's not covered in these clinics.
Can I ask a sillier question? than even you, Joe.
Doubt it.
What is naturopathy? I've never seen one. My wife has a couple of times, including when she was pregnant, I think, with our second. Can't quite remember. But what is it exactly? Or what's like the known definition of it?
There's many known definitions depending on who you are, but a very simplified version is describing it as nutritional and herbal medicine. So essentially it's about, during a consultation, there's so many different questions asked about so many different systems in the body, because essentially we're trying to put the puzzle together of the person sitting in front of us and get to the root cause of what's going on. So you may go to a doctor, say it's for fertility, and you're essentially looked at as a uterus, whereas we're looking at the whole person. So what's happening with stress levels, what's their diet doing, what's their emotional status, and it's treating the whole person. We're not just, the sum of our parts, essentially.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
And so within that, depending on what the person needs, it might be dietary changes, lifestyle changes, or supplementation and herbal medicine.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's there's parallels for personal training if you've got a good coach. Often, you're looking at all the factors. They've just come for weight loss, but it's not just about getting on the treadmill. It's all the other stuff as well.
Exactly. I try not to look just at the uterus. View the whole thing.
Yeah, from all angles.
A holistic approach.
Yes,
holistic
absolutely.
Approach. Yeah.
It's really true though, isn't it? That would you say that idea of looking at just one thing, like that isolated view, is that typical of like Western medicine?
I would say so, and I don't know necessarily, like I don't want to shit on any doctors, so to speak, but essentially the time they have these days to sit down with a patient can be as little as 10 to 15 minutes, and that's a failure on the medical system, not on the doctor. To go and get more investigations done, you need a referral to see a specialist, and then if you have a good specialist, incredible. If you have a poor specialist, you're kind of back to the drawing board. Like I had a client today, she says she experiences pain 90% of the month throughout her cycle, and they sent her for an ultrasound to see if there was anything going on, any cysts or fibroids, and they're like, no, everything looks really good. Everything's fine. Off you go.
You're imagining that.
Yeah, off you go. I'm like, that's not good enough. So
I'm guessing in your practice that the initial consult is pretty thorough because you've got to investigate like a lot of different areas. What does that look like?
So we spend about anywhere from 75 to 90 minutes one-on-one, and it's essentially, it's a lot of questions. I literally run through all of the body systems, and I kind of say, you could be here for one thing, and I'm asking you questions that may seem completely unrelated to you, but it's just me kind of piecing everything together. But it's essentially getting all of the information I need, what they do for work, do they love their work, what are their current symptoms, what do they want to get out of working with me, what have they tried in the past, what's their diet look like, what's their movement, what kind of stress do they experience, any depression, anxiety, all of those things. Because stress is massive. And I can know in the first 5 minutes when I ask them what they do for work and if they love it, exactly what that stress picture is.
Right. It's very tied to the profession?
Yeah.
Or to their response?
More so to their health state, especially fertility. Stress greatly impacts our ability to conceive. And I've had a couple of clients that one quit a job and one has gone into private practice instead of working in the public health system, and both said that chatting to me was a catalyst when they actually realised how much they disliked their job or how much it was impacting their health. It really made them reassess, what they wanted their future to look like.
Do you find that I've found that many times dealing with somebody in the gym, usually in a one-to-one setting, they're very aware that their work is destroying them. You know, it's like they're under so much stress. One that comes to mind is a fella that was running like quite a successful marketing company under a huge amount of stress, but also like a lot of drug abuse within that role because it was a lot of parties and coke and that kind of thing, late nights, and then, you know, trying to raise a family and train, all that. Like, so just so much going wrong in that chunk of his life, or so much being mismanaged, I should say. And, you know, we would talk about it. He'd be like, yeah, I know, like I gotta make a change. But, you know, we just got to get to this point. Like I just got to get the business to here, or I just got to get this happening. And then, you know, and then I can do it. A lot of the times when you talk with people like that, they're not willing to make the change. Do you find yourself dealing with clients in a similar situation where they're like maybe high powered, full on kind of job, aware that it's causing problems, but not willing to do anything about it? They're like, I'm not going to change that. Give me a solution.
Oh, absolutely. You often come up with that kind of barrier. In naturopathy, we call them barriers to cure. You know, everybody has these roadblocks that they have to kind of move past for real change to happen. For some people it might be diet, but for some people, it may very well be their career. And all you can do in that situation is plant the seed and keep walking, you know, keep progressing forward with what you're trying to do, but always kind of come back to that particular block. And it's really, at the end of the day, up to them, right, if they want to make that change or not. And the thing that I say to my female clients who are coming to me, who are trying to conceive, is what I want you to think about is, how would you be acting right now? What would you be doing? How would you be living if you were pregnant right now? Because that's essentially what you want to happen. So would you be filling your day with all of these meetings? Would you be eating the way you're eating? Would you be sleeping the way you're sleeping? Would you have more boundaries in place? Because if you were pregnant right now, I'm sure that all of that would be, you know, pretty solid. And that gets a lot of women. That change, reframing it, is huge. And they're like, wow, I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah, it's a cool way to put it.
Yeah. Visualize the goal.
What's naturopathy's view of conventional medicine?
Again, it depends who you ask. There's a big divide in the industry. There's a huge portion of people who have been practicing for years, who have studied how I mentioned earlier, doing all of the different modalities, and they're quite set on not becoming a registered profession. And then you've got the newer graduates and I suppose people who can see the benefit of becoming a registered profession. And so I feel like we want to head towards registration to be taken seriously by conventional medicine, to bridge that gap. And it may not happen until registration comes in, because that will essentially really solidify the fact that you can't do a 2-week herbal medicine course online to call yourself a naturopath or a herbalist. So yeah, it depends on the person, and I go up and down every single week depending on the client that I've spoken to, and sending them to their doctor with a referral letter to get some blood tests. And they'll either have a doctor who will bring them to tears, telling them that they're stupid. Why would you want to get these blood tests? You don't need them. And then you have another doctor who is very supportive, will even send me the results, and are open to having a collaborative relationship.
So it does tend to get shut down a bit?
Absolutely. I always send a referral letter to a doctor. Whether they read it or not, it's professionally written, and it's trying to have that open and collaborative relationship, because essentially I would think that we want optimal health for our client.
Yeah, surely that's the agreement amongst health professionals.
Exactly. And it's part of the reason I have deferred, because going to have a child, I am going to be doing my master's in reproductive medicine, and it's to try and bridge that gap. Because if I have a lot of my clients who are going to fertility specialists and they say I'm seeing a naturopath, but they know that this naturopath has her master's in reproductive medicine, again, trying to bridge that gap.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Carved away.
Yeah, just need to finish.
Are there many out there that have both degrees or can see from both sides?
There's a lot of, I think the way naturopathy is going is a lot of people are starting to specialise, because obviously there's so many different things that need to be treated. And for example, gut health, which is huge, you need to almost devote your whole practice to delving into the research with the gut. And you can't do it all. And it's okay to not do it all. And so, yeah, there's a lot of specialisation happening and a lot of people going and doing different masters to learn more.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that you can just in that sort of scenario, you can see how an industry where it starts to specialise, it starts to funnel towards specific things, which obviously is great. But the trade-off, and we talk about this from a physicality perspective with our training here, the trade-off is that as you specialise, you move further away from other perspectives. And that is maybe somehow, you could argue how we've ended up with a medical system that is so isolated in its view. Doesn't mean it has to be that way.
Yeah.
But, I remember someone joking about it once, like their child had, what was it? It was someone's child had hurt themselves. They'd hurt their arm or their elbow or something. And one of the family relative, I think the sister of this person was like a hand specialist. And he was like, oh, can you take a look? And she was like, no, like the child's hurt their elbow, not their hand. And he joked like, are you a right or a left-hand specialist? But it's kind of that idea of it's really great to have that, to be able to go that deep on something, but then that hyper-specificity brings about its own issues.
Absolutely. And by me saying that I specialise in fertility, I still have clients that come to me and their gut needs working on and their nervous system needs working on and all of these different things, or they're, chronically ill, different viruses. I'm not just, again, going, all right, we're here to get a baby in your uterus. It is that whole person approach. And yeah, you're so right. Like, surely if she studied the hand, she studied the arm.
Can I ask more about what a session looks like, being that I haven't had one? And I guess I'm wondering,
book a session, mate.
Book a session. I think I might. Do I have a uterus? Where is that? But I'm thinking also with the practice of it, and is there a process that you go through where there's, a hierarchy of things where you look at this system first, then this system, do you know what I mean? Or is that developed by the individual? How does it work? Say I have an issue, and I know maybe we could just make an example of something and use it as a vehicle, but what does it look like?
So
how do you break it down and kind of get to the core, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I do have my kind of initial intake form on my laptop with all of my different body systems listed there, but it really depends on where that conversation goes with the individual. So if someone comes to me and they talk about the fact that, I'm looking at, I want to conceive, but recently I've also been getting quite sick, like always coming down with colds and flus. So we go through that, and then I'm like, let's jump into your immune health. And I just go down a whole rabbit hole of what's their history of infection, how many times have they had antibiotics. From there, when we talk about immune health and if there's any use of antibiotics, that leads into gut health and how that might be impacting their current state. How many times a day they're going to the toilet, are they regular, that kind of thing. So I may not necessarily have to go through every single system with the person, but I'm really led by what the person is telling me. and every single person is different. It's not necessarily a systematic approach with each consultation. It really depends what kind of evolves from the consultation. There's often a lot of emotions, and I think it comes down to people not really having someone hold the space for them, and them having the space to talk about what's going on in their life. So there's often a lot of emotions, so then we'll go down into the nervous system and go from there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Does that kind of...
Yeah, it does. Like I kind of figured it would be that way, but I also I wasn't sure whether there was like a framework that you go through and it starts from here and goes to there.
Head to toe.
It's like left hand to right hand. But yeah, I mean, the mental health aspect, I mean, it's crazy because you must put on so many different hats in that session, in the same way that when you're coaching someone, there's a lot of emotion involved and you're dealing with so much stuff. Like when you see someone, how much time do you want to spend with them? You know what I mean? Like ideally, you know, the more time they spend with you, and obviously the more action they take on, you know, the things that you guys figure out, like the better. But like, yeah, how much time do people typically spend with you? Let's say over the course of trying to get pregnant.
Okay, so depending on, in an ideal world, they would come to me at the very minimum 3 months before they actually want to try and conceive.
Right.
6 months would be incredible. A year in advance would be like they're trying to have a super baby. But a lot of people kind of generally start preconception at around the 3 to 4 month mark out of when they're trying to conceive. And so it can be expensive. Supplementation can be expensive. We have to be honest and say that the nutraceutical industry is not as lucrative, but very lucrative like the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
And so I really am mindful of how much I'm prescribing to people from a financial perspective. Also, how much can a person take? What's it, the burden on the liver, all of that. And also the cost of a consultation. I'm not bulk billed like a doctor. So I can see where there is hesitancy with booking an appointment with a naturopath. My initial consultation can be between $165 or $185, follow-ups around $100. So I generally try and space them out so that if we're going to go and do some blood tests, let's leave it 4 to 6 weeks so that they have enough time to get their blood tests, get their results and come back. I don't want to add any stress into anyone's lives with get them done in 2 weeks and then come back to me. So I know there's a lot of practitioners that do kind of, in the early days, do fortnightly or every 3 week appointments. For me, I like to send someone away, implement what we've talked about, and then let's touch base in, 4 to 6 weeks. Generally, it'll be, every 4 to 6 weeks, then they fall pregnant, and then it's like, okay, we're usually touching base in the first trimester, the second trimester, and the third trimester.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I see there's room there for case by case,
100%,
similar to us, because you want to help the person, but you got to meet them where they're at with their finances and their stress levels. And I might say you should come and see me 3 times a week because I know that they can handle that for all the different reasons. Or it's just like, once a month. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. You got to meet. Yeah. We can't just assume that everybody can
fit
afford
into the way that you, and that's,
exactly.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Here's a big question for you. You alluded at the beginning to that there's like an increasing need for help with fertility, or, the inverse is that like fertility is perhaps, becoming more of an issue. What's the reason for that? And I'm sure there's many, but if we look at it from a wide view, overview kind of thing, what are those reasons?
Girls don't know how to talk to guys. Guys don't know how to talk to girls anymore. No.
That's what it fucking is. Yeah, it's all digital now.
I would say what I see a lot with women is stress is greatly impacting their ability to conceive. So if you kind of think back, 15, 20 years ago, women had a slightly different role in the household. And I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. To each their own. Everybody has a different vision of how they want their life to look, whether they go out and chase a career or whether being at home is like their dream. So I would say that, and I've heard this from clients and friends who have been through IVF, that the IVF clinics are filled with busy women who are looking at their watch, waiting for their call up to go through and have their blood tests before they need to rush back to the office. So there's that. There's a lot of hormonal issues now, missing cycles, long cycles. That can be attributed to so many different things. Stress plays a huge role, but hormonal imbalances can be from, our chemical use, which has increased over the years. And that's, I put a post up the other day about male fertility and chemical use.
Phthalates, wasn't it?
Phthalates, yeah. So there's a woman, Dr. Shanna Swan, who has done her PhD on the topic, and she estimates that by 2050 sperm counts could be at 0 if we don't make changes now. But the issue with phthalates is that they are a byproduct of the petroleum industry, and that is not going anywhere. That's a big money maker. So you kind of have to, I suppose, chase the money to see which industry is involved, and it comes down to what we can do in our own home, the changes that we can make in our own home. So whether, for my female clients who are stressed, how can we balance that nervous system? How can we go from sympathetic nervous system dominance or fight or flight into that parasympathetic nervous system dominance or rest and digest? Stress is healthy when it's used at the right time for the right amount of time, but the fact of the matter is we're seeing people in this state all throughout the day.
Yeah, right. Like, I guess the term that we would use is highly strung or strung out.
Yeah, exactly. So stressed that they can't even sleep, tired but wired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a friend of ours, John Marsh. We had he's been on the podcast a couple of times, but we spoke about, he's very much into breath work, and he's all about like down regulation breathing. And I asked him what he thought about Wim Hof and that whole thing, and he's like, yeah, whatever, it's great for some people, but he's like, the Wim Hof method, as I see it, tends to upregulate people and then downregulate them, like kind of in the same, like, one comes after the other. But he's like, people don't need, like he said, all my chips are on the table, that all we need is more downregulation. Mm-hmm. Like we are all too highly strung.
100%. And what we also see is, people who sit at a computer all day have almost apnea, as in they're not breathing. You don't even realise that you're typing away and you haven't even taken a breath. And then when you are taking a breath, it's usually from your chest, and that's that sympathetic nervous system dominance. If you take a belly breath, that's a parasympathetic breath. And so that simple, mindful change in how you breathe, your breath is the one thing that tells the body that you're safe. And it's free. It's so
right
easy. Yeah.
I love how everybody listening just checked in with their breath.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as I was just like,
that's me.
Yeah, diaphragm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's it is free and it's right there. And I know it, but I still find myself being like, fuck, I didn't think about breathing yesterday. Like I didn't check in with it once.
I know. And, like a lot of the things that end up in my treatment plans are free, getting out in nature at the end of the day, like go for a walk around the block, get your feet on the sand if you can, or on the grass. Have your lunch away from your computer, outside if possible. If you're feeling stressed at work, do some box breathing. Like you can do that. No one will even know you're doing it. Or start your day with a guided meditation. Finish the day with a guided yoga nidra. These are free things, but nobody is prioritizing them.
And so what is at the root of all that? Like, what is it that's keeping us in this stress state? Obviously, you mentioned stressful jobs, like the work thing. What else?
Depends on the individual.
Right.
But what I see a lot is work, finishing at the end of the day, but then coming home and working or being connected to their phone, doom scrolling, comparing their life to other people's life.
Doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, like watching, you might be watching Netflix, but you've also got your phone, or you're then laying in bed and you're scrolling your phone.
Stop.
And then that's impacting, you know, your body's ability to produce melatonin.
I wanted to ask you because I mentioned before to you off air, my wife's a midwife, and well, we've had 3 kids, so, you know, definitely not, I'm not a professional, but in this area, but we've had some discussions about this, some sticky discussions as well, in terms of the first point that you made, which is more to do with just the way the world's gone. And you said 10 to 20 years ago, it's very different now, but imagine 50, 60 years ago, women were even more so in the house and home, and it's very different now. And that's really fucking tricky because, well, it's nothing that we can't change. We can change. And it's not that it's wrong, but yet we have this issue. So where do we go from here?
Just on that, is the, you know, and just to clarify for people listening, is the implication there that the...
all women are in the workforce.
Yeah, but that the housewife role carries with it its own stresses, but different stresses to a career environment. And the career environment is perhaps more stressful in a way. Mm-hmm. That's the implication of that?
Yeah, totally.
And possibly also that all of those years ago there was more of a village around a woman.
Totally.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Well, that was what I was going to come to.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
What we have is people moving away from family, myself included. You know, I've got a 3.5-year-old. Glenn's family are down the south coast, so, you know, 4.5-hour drive. My family are on the Gold Coast. During COVID, obviously, my parents could have been over in the UK. Couldn't see them. So, yeah, people are no longer surrounded by family members and have that support network to help them with all of this.
Totally.
And, you know, if you've got childcare, incredible. But, you know, keeping your relationship alive with date nights and that kind of thing, it's really tricky unless you want to pay an extra $100 to a babysitter to be able to go out for dinner. So I guess what we need to do is ask for more help and look for community that isn't necessarily family. And I think the issue that I see a lot is women don't like asking for help, whether they see it as a weakness or that they're a burden on other people. They don't want to ask for help. Like, I've recently teed up a thing with another couple who my daughter's friends with their daughter. Once a month, Glenn and I will go out for dinner. She'll go over to their place and do a Saturday night with them. We pick her up on the way home, and then vice versa. And just being able to do that and know that she's having fun and we can go out and it's not, you know, costing an arm and a leg is so great. But we wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't just have the initial conversation.
Yeah, the other part that I was, you know, about the displacement of family, the family unit, I tend to think like, and I'm not sure, like women or young women and girls don't tend to be around a lot of childbirth, depending on which area of the city that you grow up in, but I kind of feel like I see, because people don't grow up around a lot of kids, or maybe it's kind of pushed away that childbirth is that thing, but you don't. I think that once upon a time, girls used to witness their older sisters or their mothers having births, and nowadays, if I fast forward, I feel like there's a lot of anxiety around being pregnant, and you know, and my wife, you know, she worked in the hospital, and you know, she's really into home birthing, and we had a home birth and stuff like that. which she finds there's a lot of people that are just like don't know. They don't have any experience in childbirth, and also with the hospital system, they don't give them all the options. They don't know all their options. So like a lot of people are just opting for C-sections and stuff. And yeah, it just seems like it's a shitty issue sometimes when it comes to like giving birth. It's like a lot of people just don't know what to do necessarily.
No, they fall pregnant and they're
that
like,
way.
what do I do now?
What do I do now?
I mean, I was the same.
And they often put their trust in other people, and it's less intuitive, and it's unfortunate there's less people around them, family members, as you said.
Yeah, and that kind of losing the intuition, I mean, that's essentially the overarching thing with all of the stuff that I've discussed so far, is that people are no longer like they're in their head, they're out of their body. So with different symptoms that arise, everything like that, they're no longer in their body or trust their body or know what their body's telling them. But yeah, so many people, they fall pregnant, they pee on the stick, and then if they've got private health, they go through a private obstetrician, and that is not always a beautiful experience. And then they don't even know that the public system has this incredible service with midwifery-led care. It's a huge issue. Great, I'm sure your wife knows about it, the documentary Birth Time.
Yes, yeah. That's were her mentors when she studied, Jo, and she gave birth to our daughter and stuff, and we went saw that. Yeah, great documentary.
Yeah, incredible. And as they say, it should just be laid out your different options when you do fall pregnant.
Yeah.
Like, it's very normal. If you want to go private, awesome. But these are also your other options. Yeah.
It's a tough one.
That being in your head, being out of your body piece, that's kind of related to the sympathetic, parasympathetic state. Makes me think of, there's Paul, you mentioned intuition, and there is probably somewhere most of us have an intuition or a gut feeling about certain areas of our health. Like, oh, maybe this isn't quite right for me. Maybe I don't feel great after I ate that thing. Maybe I should stop eating that. I feel that with beers sometimes. I'm like, maybe I should stop drinking beers. But I slap myself and keep drinking the beers. But you have these little insights. But I feel like largely we've lost our intuition with a lot of things. And I think for a lot of folks, I feel like, and I guess I'm asking this as a question, we've come so far that maybe there's no opportunity at regaining the intuition. So it requires outside help in order to try and then learn a bit of conscious stuff, so that then you can maybe start to rely on your gut feeling a bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And because even just talking to, you have to gauge the client, but even just talking about, mindfulness as an idea that someone might implement in their day, people are either they've heard about it and they're open to it, or they're just thinking, what is she going on about?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I do think it can be taught. And I think the sad thing is that for a lot of people, they're not getting back in touch with their body until they have a big wake up call, until something happens to their health or something like that makes them go, oof, maybe I shouldn't be eating that way. Or, you see it a lot with men who have heart attacks. Like, that's the catalyst for them maybe eating differently or moving their body more. And it's sad that we have to get to that point to get there.
Yeah, a friend of ours described it, and I never forget it, and I use it often, is like that intuition, which is like we lose it because we're so busy, right? And we're masked, so it's kind of drowned out. But he said, like, your body or some intuition will tickle you if there's something wrong. And if you don't listen to the tickle, it'll poke you. And if you don't listen to that, it'll throw a brick at your head.
Exactly.
And then some people don't listen to that still, and the Mack truck will come and take you out.
Yeah, that is a brilliant analogy.
That was Ben.
Yeah, feather brick truck.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I just added some other layers.
Yeah, absolutely. Fuck, I'm saying absolutely a lot at the moment. But yeah, I agree with that. That's a good way to put it, is masked. I think
Yeah.
we often feel a lot of these things, like when you go camping and everyone's like, oh man, I was going to sleep so early and, you know, just chilling out and happy to not do, you know, and you're like, yeah, that's what happens when there's no technology, no
That's what
artificial
happens
light.
when you go to bed when it's dark and you wake up when it's light. Like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
Yeah.
It's a miracle.
Yeah. Which, you know, we're not, I guess I don't preach hard about that. I think if you live in an urban environment, you have to adapt to that environment, but you don't have to completely succumb to it. Like there's ways to try and like you are going to stay up later than sunrise generally.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, you know, at least if you fucking want to watch some telly or whatever, you got kids or something.
Yeah.
But you can work with it in a way that is a little bit more intuitive with your body than.
Yeah. I mean, the hard thing is that we have an inbuilt circadian rhythm, and yes, we have evolved to have street lights and, you know, our mobile phones and our laptops and our TVs, but our circadian rhythm still hasn't changed. So we can't, yeah, you're right. We're not going to bed to a campfire and waking up to the sunshine, but there are ways that we can kind of try and bring a little bit of balance in, especially if it's affecting, you know, our overall health.
Could we go to maybe, and I guess looking at this from the view of women who are maybe in a training situation, like so they're doing regular strength training, whatever, CrossFit, F45, any kind of thing. So yeah, and that I guess that often tends to speak to a certain kind of person, you know, motivated to go and exercise and that whole thing. Could you talk on what maybe some of the common issues that you would see coming up with that part of the population?
Yeah, so having come from, well, I used to do CrossFit training, not a coach, absolutely not, but seeing that people become addicted to it, essentially. You'd see it, you know, people would be there 7 days a week if you allow them to be there 7 days a week. And there's so many positive attributes to that, the community, the focus that it brought onto what people are eating, and also women getting strong, all incredible things. But I guess one of the biggest things is if they are in a high-powered, stressful job and then their cortisol's raised and then they're coming into, say, a CrossFit setting and absolutely smashing it multiple days a week, again, heightened cortisol. They could be doing all the right things, but certain things start happening with their body. So for some women it might be an irregular period. So maybe it comes early, maybe it comes late, maybe it's missing, because that's a stress on the body. And the body will say, your brain overrides everything, the hypothalamus, and if it thinks that it's not a safe environment to conceive, it will shut down your ability to conceive. Or say you've got someone who is prone to maybe weight gain, and so they're, they're smashing themselves at the gym every day. They might be restricting their calories because that's what all of the magazines tell them to do. And what ends up happening is that they've got that heightened cortisol. Their body thinks they're going into starvation mode, so it starts storing everything they eat as fat. And so you've got these women on both ends of the scale that are either missing their cycle, getting quite lean, or women who are putting on weight and they think they're doing the right thing. Right,
despite training a shitload and not eating much.
Exactly. And the sad thing is, and I had to check the dates on this, so it's only been since 1993 that women have been included in clinical trials and research, which isn't that long ago.
For what? For everything?
So when we're talking about sports and performance and diets.
I remember Stacey Sims talks a lot about this, doesn't she?
Dr. Stacey Sims, yeah.
Yeah. Wild. That
huge.
They were considered an anomaly prior to that, weren't they?
Yeah, and so then, but even since then, a lot of the women that are included in the studies are menopausal. So we don't have that beautiful ebb and flow of hormones that we'd see with a woman of reproductive age. And so I suppose from a research point of view, that's easier. We can say we've got women in the trial, but we don't have the hormones to work with. But how cool would it be to actually have the studies on, women of reproductive age at different stages of their cycle and how they perform, or how a certain way of eating will impact them? Because it does change across the month.
Yeah, that would be cool. Is it? Do you think that they've been excluded? I mean, there's many reasons for that, but do you think that the nature of the menstrual cycle just makes it harder for like some researchers? So they're like, I'm just going to go with dudes because dudes are pretty consistent.
I totally get why they have, and there are so many different variables, and you'd have to, say the women in the study, their cycle length is consistently X amount of days. This is when they ovulate. And so if it varies in a group, then results could be skewed. So there's a lot of, I suppose it leaves space for a lot of exciting research in the future, and I hope that it is done, because I think you could see some really cool things in relation to, increased PBs, or, workout times, or VO2 max, all of these things, if you actually kind of look across the different stages of the cycle.
I was talking, I spoke a while ago, but we released an episode a couple of weeks ago where I spoke with a woman named Sarah Gross, who's actually she manages Stacey Sims' media company. So she does the marketing for her, and she's all about empowering an active culture for women. And we were talking about exactly that. And she was just telling me about, which is, from what I've learned, is a very common measure that's taken, but kind of blew my mind. She's like, she was a champion triathlete, and she said, depending when the event was and where you're at with your menstrual cycle, you would just take the pill if you needed to shut down your cycle if it was falling on or around the event.
I totally get that, because when you are, so basically, if we really simplify it, you could say that the menstrual cycle's broken into two, with the first half being your follicular phase and the second half being your luteal phase. So in the follicular phase, that is when your hormones are increasing. So and I can break it down even more, but that's essentially your hormones go from being low, they're increasing, they get to their absolute peak at, say, ovulation. And then the luteal phase is when they start declining on their way back to, say, a female getting her period. And so if you have an event when your period's due, that's when your hormones are at their absolute lowest.
And when is what's the ideal time there? High hormones or low hormones? So
the optimal time. So I often like relating the menstrual cycle to the seasons of the year, because I think it is really, like, I have a lot of women in their 30s who have never really understood their menstrual cycle. So no questions are kind of off the table, because a lot of women don't even know their cycle. But if we look at, say, day one of their period, that's considered like your winter. And if you think about how you feel in winter, you kind of want warmer foods. You may want to rest a little bit more. You're feeling a little bit more, sluggish, or make excuses as to why you don't want to get outdoors. And then the feeling coming into spring, like winter's finished and it's all of a sudden spring, and there's just a difference in the air, right? You just feel a little bit perkier. Maybe you're a little bit more social. So this is kind of, heading into that towards ovulation. So it's a really good time to kind of make plans, start new projects.
Peak follicular.
Yeah.
Right, just before.
Exactly. Then you get to ovulation, which is a small window, but that's what I'd describe as your inner summer. So that's when when a woman would say she feels her best, libido's up there. It's a very social and outgoing time. That would be a time. So the spring, summer would be when a woman would feel like peak physical performance. So she might hit PBs, run her fastest time, whatever, modality she does. And then you go into your inner autumn. So this is when your hormones are starting to, go down, You may, for that first, it's usually a 2-week. The luteal is like 2 weeks, but you may find that first week you're still feeling okay. You know, you still got a bit of energy, but that week before your period, that's when a lot of women's symptoms pop up, whether it be mood changes or appetite changes, that kind of thing. And so it's about just knowing where you're at in your cycle and honouring that. It doesn't mean that you have to stop training, but maybe you just pull back and focus on strength or skill or something like that. And like, as I've said to you before, Joey, that's a huge benefit of this facility, is that you can do just that. You know, your women aren't flogging themselves at the gym every day.
Yeah. I mean, it seems it's the same for guys, really, when from our perspective with the training thing, where it's like you can't be doing high intensity, like high volume work all the time. You will crash and burn. And, you know, guys have the benefit of obviously not having to deal with this kind of like, you know, roller coaster on a physiological level. I'm sure they have their own shit, but yeah, for women, it's obviously even more important that there's, I don't know, for a gym, that there's options for different phases.
Yeah, I feel like men, so another woman who's written a lot about it, other than Dr. Stacey Sims, is Elisa Vitti. She's a naturopathic doctor, and she relates it to, so men, their hormones work on a circadian rhythm, so a 24-hour cycle, and women work on an infradian rhythm, which is essentially anything longer than 24 hours. So if you think about how a man would generally feel in the morning, his energy starts peaking. Middle of the day, afternoon, he's still kind of, I'd say middle of the day, he's at his peak. Might start dropping a little bit in the afternoon, but still has a fair bit of energy. And then if you're anything like my partner, you get home and it's like a flat line. And like, if you kind of relate the female menstrual cycle to that 24-hour rhythm, they look similar. It's just that a women's is stretched across a month and yours is over a 24-hour period.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I could identify with that.
The flat line?
Yeah, I'm getting tired right now.
Yeah. I tend to hit my peak around lunchtime, I guess. I mean, I'm a classic case of I don't let myself, like I can keep working. I think we're so well trained from being in the film industry, and then also, you know, owning our own gym. You're just really good at working all the time. Yeah. And you just get it done. It doesn't matter. And it's a great skill to have, but it, you know, it allows you.
That's work ethics or hormones?
Work ethic. Coffee. Yeah. It would,
I think agents.
Yeah, I would say it's totally acting against, you know, what your physiology is saying.
Yeah. I think the other thing to note with the cycle is that at different stages, a woman's metabolism can differ. So in that kind of first half of the cycle, when their hormones are on the increase, their metabolism's actually a little bit sluggish. And so that's a really good time if women do things like intermittent fasting, not that I think a woman of reproductive age should do, but that would be the time to do it when you have those hormones on the rise. It's also like a great time to support the liver to clear out all of those hormones in preparation for the second half of your cycle. So maybe eating things that are a lot fresher, like have your salads, have lots of leafy greens and bitter greens and liver supporting foods. And then in that second half of your cycle, as your hormones start to drop, that's when we actually burn more calories and when we should be nourishing ourselves a lot better, focusing on complex carbohydrates, because I think that's one of the biggest things I see is women avoiding carbs. And they can greatly support how a woman is that week before her period.
Right.
So, you know, quinoa, brown rice, barley, sprouted breads, roasted sweet potato, potatoes, pumpkin, all of these things, but so many women avoid them.
What's this term like hormonal imbalance gets thrown around a lot, and, you know, we know in fitness, like there's some generalizations that are made, like, you know, you see it a lot in, say, women who are bodybuilding or, figure competition, that kind of thing. But even, those who are chasing like high levels of athleticism, a lot of CrossFitters, overtraining, pushing it too hard, hormonal imbalance. What does that actually mean? Like, what do we, what, I'm guessing that it's a very general term. Can you explain that to me a bit?
Yeah, it is a very general term. And I suppose, what does normal look like?
Good place to start.
Yeah. I don't even know that. I don't know that anyone knows that because they vary so much. But I suppose what we're looking at is when we get blood tests done, we're looking at what the relationship is between estrogen and progesterone. So if a woman, we have our, healthy range, that's like quotation marks, because when I think of pathology done through the doctors, essentially a lot of sick people or unwell people are going to get bloods, and so that's their range is built on the average of, that population. Whereas as a naturopath, we would look at optimal ranges. So just because someone falls within the healthy range, we might still see it as suboptimal high or suboptimal low. But essentially we're looking at, what's estrogen doing? So if we've got a woman who has a really heavy cycle, and a woman would know this if she has to, say change a tampon every 2 hours or wear 2 forms of sanitary items, she would know if she has a heavy cycle. Generally we'd see estrogen very, very high, and that would be causing her a host of different symptoms. And I suppose that imbalance also comes down to the symptom picture, what that particular woman is experiencing. If we have a woman who's experiencing really low mood before her period, irritability, even verging on, say, anxiety and depression, we might be seeing that progesterone is very low, and progesterone is what we need to hold a pregnancy. But it can also be just that the gap between the two is quite different, and so we want to, bridge that gap and have more balance within their hormones. In women who have, say, missing cycle from polycystic ovarian syndrome, where she starts noticing maybe some male pattern hair growth, maybe some, back acne, that would be the male hormones that are coming into play. So the testosterone being quite elevated. So you'd be working on kind of reducing that to get the balance back. So essentially, I suppose normal would be where she doesn't have any symptoms.
Yeah, right. And feels well.
Yeah.
Which can change at different times of the month, and
yes,
it's there's much to it.
Women are so different to men. Realizing this, so different.
Well, here's a question. I had a naturopath years ago who I saw for a long time. I really liked him. His name was John McGuire. He was in the city. And I'd see him for I used to get tonsillitis a bunch. I'd see him for things like that, sinus. I'd kind of like allergies and whatnot. He helped me with it. But he said to me, we were talking, I was doing jiu-jitsu at the time, and I was talking to him about competition and finding it challenging and stressful and that kind of thing. And he was saying, well, men have their own hormonal cycles. He said they're different to women, but he said, we don't talk about it much, but he's like, they're there, so, maybe, he said, maybe sometimes, it's funny, he never asked me about my sleep, and I think I was just undersleeping all these years. But, he just alluded to you're a complex being as well.
Absolutely.
We didn't really take it any further than that.
Yeah, and that's taking it into if you look at that flow across, your sleep and wake cycle, and how, if you were really in tune with it, how you'd kind of see that flow. It's just you have yours every day, and ours is stretched across the month. And, I can have a woman who comes to me and she's like, I have suicidal ideation. I'm depressed, low mood, feel like I can't get out of it. But then when we actually go through the questioning, it's that 2 weeks before her cycle, but because it happens every fortnight, it seems like it's all the time.
Right.
But when we actually work it out, it could be, you know, a severe form of PMS called PMDD. And it's just a case of, you know, supporting her hormones to bring that balance back. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh yeah, I'm not actually depressed. It was just during that period of time.
Could you talk on some of the common prescriptions? You mentioned that sometimes it's very simple stuff, it's free stuff. Could you talk on what some of the common sort of recommendations you make to women in this realm?
It'd be, you know, overall assessing her dietary intake to see where might need to be supported until she can kind of meet those dietary needs, because my first and foremost, food all of the way. Like I don't want people to be relying on herbs and supplements for the rest of their life. Ideally, they're nailing their diet and still enjoying things. Like I love going out for a burger and pizza, you know, that's living.
Does Glenn have the burger and the pizza too?
At the same time, he would need both.
He'll partake?
Yes, he loves it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but it gets expensive because he needs more than one.
He's a big guy. We're going to give him a shout. We haven't said hi yet. Big G, I miss you. Paul misses you too.
And that's how you know Renee.
That's
For
right.
the listeners.
Yep. CrossFit Bondi, the Bondi
Yeah.
connection. There's a history there.
The Bondi connection.
Bondi connection.
Leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah, go on.
So prescriptions, it's not one size fits all ever, but generally I can say that the main things that someone would be deficient in would be things like vitamin D, zinc is a huge one, magnesium. So we don't often go and do a blood test for magnesium. You can do it, but judging by a lot of people's symptoms, if they're, you know, struggling with their nervous system, if they are getting a lot of cramps in the lead up to their cycle, magnesium's just, it's one of those things that's responsible for like 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. One of my lecturers at uni said it should be in the water supply.
Right.
Everyone could benefit from magnesium.
I've never heard a strength coach or a health specialist who hasn't supported the use of magnesium.
Yeah, and there's different forms of magnesium as well. So, you know, if someone's got issues with their gut and maybe they're not going to the toilet as often as they can, you can do like a magnesium citrate, which helps with bowel movement. Mm-hmm. I really like magnesium glycinate. It's a really beautiful one for the nervous system.
Right.
It's calming. So my recommendation is usually glycinate based on who I'm seeing in clinic, and it's dosed before bed
Okay.
to help with their sleep.
Where do you find magnesium in food?
Dark
or do you-
chocolate,
Oh.
red wine. No, so that's where your leafy greens, your beautiful whole grains, dark chocolate is one of them. You can find it in so many foods. So that's where, you know, a balanced diet definitely comes into play. And then if not, you've got your supplementation there. But I have done a huge backflip in the last, say, 6 to 12 months on how much I prescribe, because I do believe in that more of a whole food approach. So I've also started prescribing a lot of like, say for iron, like beef liver. I personally take a combo. It's beef liver, beef heart, beef kidney in a capsule. Mm-hmm. I love cod liver oil because you're getting your vitamin D, you're getting some vitamin A as well as your essential fatty acids. For some of my clients, I've started prescribing oyster capsules for zinc.
Right.
Because they're like the powerhouses of zinc, having oysters. But we can't all afford oysters every night.
I used to like smoked oysters from a tin. Not
Delicious.
sure if they hit the mark.
I would say if they're from a good source, then it's still got zinc in it.
I don't think they were. I think they were John West or something like that.
How about the herbs? Can you tell me about that? Because you mentioned it in your description, and that's kind of, I always think of naturopaths as prescribing herbs. How does that play a part? Is that is that supplementation or is it part of the diet prescription?
That is considered supplementation. Again, wouldn't want anyone to be on herbs long term. It's too expensive.
So what is it? Is it herbs like a group of plants or like a...
So it's many different plants, flowers, barks from different species. And basically, for the most part, they're extracted on ethanol and bottled. So they have a long shelf life. Some of them are extracted differently to make them more appealing taste-wise to, say, children, or if you have someone who has non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or a history of alcoholism, we do have the low ethanol and the glycetract formulas that they can take that's not going to, be alcohol. And when I say alcohol, you're not going to get drunk from them. It's just the process of extraction. And based on both traditional knowledge of herbs and how they were used several thousands of years ago, and also based on more recent scientific evidence, each herb has a different herbal action on the body. So let's say a lot of people would know, say, Panax ginseng. That is what we would consider an adaptogen herb. So it helps people adapt from different stresses, but it also is quite I almost describe it as rocket fuel because I feel like it gives people a lot of energy. I would say it's more of a male herb. There's a lot of research with sperm health and Panax ginseng. So that would be something that would go into a blend of herbs for a male fertility case, along with a couple of other ones, depending on what's going on with that individual. And then you have other herbs that are more nervous system herbs. So they're quite calming. We have herbs that help with sleep onset, that help with sleep maintenance, that help with digestive issues. So a bitter, which will help the digestive process start in a person's body. And then we have like female herbs that, for example, if a woman's having a baby, she will start taking herbs, say, from about 34 weeks that are going to help prepare the uterus for all of the contractions and hopefully elicit a smoother labour and help her uterus return to size after birth. So it's pretty incredible. There's herbs for everything.
It's pretty much like just the power of plants, and you prescribe plants to people, but you take them sometimes in a pill, sometimes as a tea.
Yeah, exactly. So depending on, I suppose, liquid herbs can be pretty funky.
I've pumped some of those in my time.
Yeah.
Liquid herbs, like just mixed into a drink, you mean?
So this is where they're extracted on alcohol or ethanol. And so generally a dose would be, say, 7.5 mil twice a day. So you're filling your little measuring cup to 7.5 mil, top the rest with water, and you're shotting it. But they don't taste great. So it depends on compliance. If someone's like, done plenty of tequila shots before, I can handle a shot of herbs, down the hatch. Whereas other people cannot take them, they make me gag. So maybe you'd look at, a tablet formula, which a lot of companies offer.
Yep.
You can't get as specific. I think the great thing about liquid herbs is a herbal mix can be so completely tailored to the individual. Whereas if we're going down the form of a tablet, they might have like a nervous system mix, but it might not have all of the herbs that you want in it. And then with, say, nutraceuticals, instead of someone taking a whole heap of different tablets, you could make one powder that has everything in it that you want someone to take.
So you do that?
Yeah, we can do that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's a little bit witchy. It
No,
does
but
sound it.
Yeah, to me it sounds kind of logical that plants, scrubs, bark, they all have properties that have an effect on the body. It's just, I just think of it as food, essentially. Like I was just picking the right food.
Yeah. But I mean, so many pharmaceutical drugs are based on the actions of plant medicine.
Totally.
Well, a lot of it, comes from there, doesn't it?
It does.
So, which I think I think for people listening, it can be easy to think like, oh, you're mixing like leaves and shit, and it's like, yeah, but that's what medicine is.
Yeah, I got my mortar and pestle, just grinding out some twigs.
I listened to a guy talk the other day. He was saying that the testosterone that you would buy now, which is mostly coming from China, which is what would be used by, you know, people who are illegally using testosterone. He said it's extracted from soybeans or from sweet potato. You know, which, and you know, so yeah, like it's could eat. I mean,
plant matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, a good example is aspirin. It was modelled off the herbal actions of, you know, one particular plant medicine. And if someone takes too much aspirin, it can cause, you know, gastric upset and ulceration, you know, because of the way that the mode of the drug. Whereas if you take it in herbal formula, it's not going to act as fast, but it actually goes through the digestive system and then is only activated once it goes through the digestive system. Whereas the herb is active, the pharmaceutical drug is active the whole way. And so that's where the discomfort comes from. So it's a little bit of a shortcut.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And I don't know much about medicines. I didn't grow up taking many or anything like that. And I know it's a bit of a controversial space, but to me it seems really logical. I remember when I was really young, this must have been some of the first times I went back to Fiji, back to our village, and I was given herbal medicine. Like, I remember I had conjunctivitis, and they took me to and it was a woman, it was a lady, and she picked some stuff out and she ground it up and squeezed it, and I had to drink this juice. You know, I don't know whether it worked or not, but it makes sense to me. They also got some plants. Once I had, I can't remember what they call it. It's named, the name is the Fijian word for bat, which I can't remember because I can't speak Fijian very well. But it was like I had a sweat gland that had developed under my armpit. It was really thick, and it happens often because you're in a humid country. They call it bat because like you need to hang. I had to hang all the time to let it through. Well, this is what they told me to do. I was young, but it was also another thing with a plant. They got a plant and freaking pulped it up, and just like my auntie, who was a midwife in the village for many, many years, and she delivered my sister on a boat many years ago. She slapped it in my armpit and and then proceeded to massage it violently.
So that's that's called a poultice.
Okay.
Yeah, so where the herbs are like ground down and applied topically, and
to the skin,
and there's still herbs that you can do that. Like if you grow, say, you know, comfrey's one of them, which is like a wild weed, and you have like a sprain or an ache. I'm not saying don't go to the don't like treat your broken arm with it, but if you like strain something and you've got comfrey, you would make a poultice out of it, apply it, wrap a bandage, and it has that local anti-inflammatory effect.
We always use pawpaws on cuts because there's pawpaws everywhere, and you cut yourself very easily and it gets infected in that humid place, but it was the pawpaw skin would just go on and cut it on your leg, and it's just like, oh, it's cool relief.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? And I'm not sure if it's Fiji, but kava.
Kava's from Fiji and other nations.
So that is like one of our incredible nervous system herbs that can really down-regulate someone's nervous system. Like if they suffer from...
His family are experts in this down-regulation.
Because sometimes too much.
Yeah, no, so people can abuse it.
Yeah, they do.
But... you know, it's incredible. It can, for someone, say they have performance anxiety, maybe they have to give a presentation at work or something like that, pop some kava and it should just mellow them out.
Right on.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, and
takes the edge off.
Definitely takes the edge off, sometimes more, depending on how many bowls you drink. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I've been fortunate enough to have the experience through going to family things at Paul's, you know, with Paul's fam. And it's like, like a couple of bowls of kava, and like what I noticed is because you tend to sit around on a mat, which is not overly comfortable, sitting there cross-legged on a mat, not really doing anything. But all of a sudden, after a couple of bowls, you're very comfortable to just sit there on the mat and do nothing. And you can sit there for hours, which is testament to, yeah, it's totally chilling you out. Because normally I'd be like, oh, fuck,
Fidgeting.
yeah, what's my phone doing? Where's the party at? You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bondi vibes.
Yeah. Gotta get back to Bondi, man.
Bringing it back.
Oh, that's really cool. I suppose then there's, you know, places where you have to find a supplier to get this stuff, and I suppose there's any and all different types of suppliers and regulation and whatnot in that field, and that's probably case for having a good naturopath that gets good product.
Absolutely. I think we're very lucky now. I mean, when I have a client online, they get an email from the company that I prescribe through. They can log on. Products are delivered to their doorstep. Obviously, this particular supplier stocks so many different brands, and it's just about you knowing the ones you work with, the ones that have good research behind them, reputable companies, good testing, that kind of thing would be the ones that you lean towards. So yes, there's so much that you can get over the counter these days, but I think it's so important to know what you're buying, because you could just be, for example, say a B vitamin, you could just be buying expensive whey because you're just going to weigh them out.
Yeah.
So know where it's coming from. So I think you're pretty safe to say, like, if someone's not going to see a naturopath, they could go to a really good health food store, and they usually will have a range that's behind the counter that you can't just pick up and buy, or in a cabinet, and they're generally the ones that you'd want to reach for.
Is that often like, are you talking naturopathic drugs or are you talking supplements?
This is more supplements.
Like bioceutical stuff is often in that realm, isn't it?
Yeah, so some of the really good ones at the moment are like Orthoplex, Metagenics have a good reputation, Biomedica have a really good reputation. I think Bioceuticals, they have their clinical range, which is white label, and then they've got their blue range that you would be able to just get off the shelves.
Yeah.
As for herbal medicine, you would be finding a dispensary. There's a couple around here. It's different everywhere, but I also have an online dispensary. So I will put in, you know, my herbal formula that I want a client to have. It gets made up and it gets delivered to them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. The end goal is for me to have a wall full of herbs that I can just kind of, you know, make something up as I go.
True witch status.
Yeah, I just think it's cool to have everything you need on hand to be able to keep your family well.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah.
To put something together, someone's got a symptom today, it's like I have the knowledge to be able to.
Exactly. Like my daughter, if she gets run down from daycare, she takes herbs and she loves it. I give it to her in a little glass measuring cup and down the hatch. She's been doing that since, you know, for the past few years. She has cod liver oil every night. That stuff tastes disgusting and she sucks it out of the dropper.
Oh, wow.
So you just...
Not even in a gel cap.
No, not even in a gel cap. Straight down. So you start them young and it becomes all they know. And I hope that, you know, as she grows up, she's going to have, you know, this wisdom from her mum, knowing that you can look after your health naturally, and hopefully the education she needs to love her menstrual cycle and not look at it as a burden like so many women do now, or a weakness.
That's an interesting point you mentioned about your daughter being comfortable to eat things that for most of us would be a bit distasteful, like fish oil or cod liver oil. It makes me think, you know, you were mentioning before you take those beef, you know, the beef, it's powdered.
Liver.
Liver, heart. What was the other one?
Liver, heart and kidney in a capsule.
Right. And
Liver queen.
Offal.
Not eating any testicles.
Not yet. I could see Big G fulfilling the male role in that.
Oh, totally.
But the discussion around offal and organ meats, and how in our generation now, if you're in the health realm, you know that organ meats are really good. And like, if you've read Nourishing Traditions, it's like, yeah, you got to be doing bone broth and you got to try and get some liver in there. But for all of us, like people around our age, like 30, 40, it's like, man, this stuff tastes like shit.
I know.
Because most of us, or at least I never grew up on it. I grew up on muscle meat.
Yeah.
Chicken breast, lamb cutlets, whatever. Whereas you go to more, you see people who are eating in a more traditional way, you travel overseas, or, people from other countries, and they eat all that shit. And it's like, oh yeah, we've eaten that forever. Like,
I know.
And I feel like potentially, we have an opportunity to try and influence our young to be more comfortable eating those things, just like you would a piece of steak.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wonder how our nutrient status would be if we ate that way, because you're getting so much more from the organ meats than you could ever get from a capsule.
Yeah.
All I can say is, like, thank God for companies like Ethical Farmers who put it into their sausages and mince and that kind of thing, and you wouldn't even know it's there. Tastes delicious.
Those beef, bacon, liver sausages or something, huh?
They are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's and that whole carnivore mince thing.
Yeah.
It's great that those companies are doing that.
Yeah, and a great way to get it into your family for sure.
There's Ethical Farmers, Paulie. For anyone listening, they actually supplied us here at the gym for an open day we had some years ago. They sent, I knew Dom, I think, who's one of the owners from when he had his butcher in Vaucluse, which I'm sure you went there too. But I contacted him and said, we're doing a thing. He said, man, no worries. We bought a bunch of organic beef patties from them, but he sent us a bunch of eggs for free. It was like, take like 100 eggs so we could do like egg and kind of beef sandwiches. But they do this carnivore mince, which is it 70-30?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, which I think is like the recommended when you're kind of introducing that. It's a good balance that it doesn't taste too
full on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 70% beef mince, 30% organ mince. So some liver, kidney, whatever, heart. Yeah, it's mad. You can make meatballs, spaghetti, spag bol, all that classic stuff without realizing that you're eating some liver or whatever.
Exactly.
Do you order that online?
Yeah. They're actually really good. I highly recommend them to anybody. They're local, like they're more or less local to here. All of their stuff, it doesn't travel that far. I think if you spend over $100, it's free delivery. We tend to order from them once a month and then chuck it in the freezer, and we're good for the month.
And I think they go up to Newcastle, and I have a client who lives near Jarvis Bay who also gets it delivered. So they're pretty broad delivery, which is good.
I need to get me some because we're losing that battle with the kids. In terms of like changing the diets, God.
Yeah.
Start them young and give them things that things that you're repulsed by. Feed them to them because they don't know any different. Like sardines, and if you turn your nose up, like Freya used to down sardines, and I'd feel like hosing her off at the end, but you kind of can't put these things on your children, right?
It's a great point.
Yeah.
I think that's a great spot for us to wrap it up on. That's a big chat, and I feel like there's so much stuff we didn't get into.
For sure.
Which begs a part 2 at some stage.
Happy to be here.
It was so informative for me because I really came with no knowledge. I did ask my wife a little bit about her experience just quickly yesterday about it, knowing you were coming. So for me, it was awesome to chat to you.
Thank you so much. And like I said to you guys, there are so many women that don't even know how their cycle works. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Well, Paulie and I are now qualified to tell them how it works.
Exactly.
We did this. Renee, can you plug what you got going on? Where can people find you and access your services? You got a great Instagram. Plug that, please.
Yes, so you can find me at Renee Lynch _naturopath. That's where I put a lot of my information. I should probably do a lot more on my blog, but I'm also at reneelynchnaturopath.com.au. Plenty of information on how to book in with me there, and working on a kind of conscious conception fertility course, hopefully to launch later this year.
Awesome. Where's your clinic?
So I'm currently solely online at the moment.
Okay.
But that allows me to work with women all over the world.
Amazing. Was that a COVID thing or was that?
Yeah, it kind of pushed me that way.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
It means I'm not locked into a capital city. I can be anywhere and reach anyone, which is great.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Thank you for today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you need some help with any of that, please check out Renee's work. And if you dig the show, please help show some love for us. Share the episode with a friend. And while you're at it, why don't you give us a little review, leave us 5 stars on whichever app you listen to the show on. Thank you. We'll catch you guys next week.